150 days on the ark is where chapter 7 left off. And this is a long time on end in any one place. But chapter 8 takes place with Noah and his family getting off the ark, but first, we begin with God remembering Noah. Do not for a moment think that God ever forgot about Noah, as Noah was always in God's sights, which needs to be remembered, as God never leaves nor forsakes us. He instructed Noah about what to do, and even how to do certain things, so God was always there with Noah. The Cambridge Bible Schools and Colleges commentary explains that God remembered is the same expression occurs in Genesis chapter 19 verse 29 and Genesis chapter 30 verse 22. It is a form of anthropomorphism which is not infrequent in the Old Testament, and which is in continual use in the language of devotion. In case you are wondering, anthropomorphism is a technique of writing, particularly in religious literature, that attributes human emotions to God. Here, the human emotion that is given to God is remembering, as God remembered Noah. Cherie Hayes and the Bible Project team explain that to say that God remembers is to say that He is doing exactly what He promised. He never forgets. God remembered Noah, but He also never forgot about the others on the ark, including the animals, as God made a way for His promise to come to pass. So when God remembers something or someone, He is truly making a way for His promise. He never writes a check that comes back void. And we are told this by God making a wind to pass over the earth, which illustrates God providing a way for Noah's ark to come to rest safely, and for all the inhabitants to be removed safely. The first verse illustrates that there is nothing too big for God. For me, none of what we have read about in the last few chapters would be a problem. Just getting the ark built would be a big problem for me. But not for God, as He was able to get the ark finished, flooded the earth, and then prepare for the repopulation of the earth without problem. This is the God that Noah served, the same one that we serve, and the same one that created the heaven and the earth in the beginning of time, Genesis 1 verse 1. And the same God that provided a way for Noah and his family and all the animals. The next few verses let us know that God controls the weather. The wind that was sent upon the earth was used to dry out the earth, and the great amount of rainfall that had been experienced was stopped. But it's possible that small amounts of rain continued, as we are told the rain was restrained, not stopped. This allowed for the large amounts of water on the earth to decrease, and it would not be long before the ark touched the ground and came to a complete stop. From the time Noah and his family entered into the ark to the time the ark stopped is the 150-day account given by the Bible. And while there is a process in place for Noah and his family to leave the ark, it's not complete yet. Thus far, the wind to dry the earth has passed over the earth, and the waters have abated, which allows for the ark to eventually come to a safe resting spot. At this point, it is not safe enough for Noah to leave the ark, but it's getting there. When we think about Mount Ararat, it's an interesting place for any structure to come to a rest on, especially if people are going to be exiting the structure. The top of a mountain would appear to be one that would be unsafe. But as God has already illustrated, there is nothing too big for Him, but perhaps. And it's just a thought, God wanted this ark to be preserved, so resting the ark on the mountain would seem to be a great way to do this. Further, with the water reaching the depths that it had, the tops of the mountains, we can rest in assurance that this was not a local flood, but was a global one. In the last chapter, chapter 7, we are given a specific date when the rain would come. From Genesis 7 verse 11, the rain would begin in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month. But now we have the ark coming to a rest on Mount Ararat on the 17th day of the 7th month. This is real history that we are given. And this matters because the Bible is a book of many subjects, including history. And we know that the writer is telling us that this event was not a metaphor or a parable but a real-life event. We further see this by the writer informing us of the roundabout location in which the ark rested, although it does not say the exact specific location of the ark. The process continues as the water are decreased, so much so that the mountain tops can be seen. When the ark came to a rest, Noah was 600 years old. And while the earth was continuing to dry out, Scripture is clear that it took to the 10th month for the tops of the mountains to become visible. That's about another 2.5 months, or 10 weeks. If someone tells you that the Bible is full of fables and myths like a storybook, you can rest assured that the Creator would not give you all of the exacts if there were no exacts to be given. After all, how could you give exact details on events unless something happened? While there are many events in history that have been distorted, we have evidence and proof for the flood, and the Bible lets us know specifics about it which illustrates this was a literal event in history. 40 days would pass from the time the mountains became visible until the time Noah would open up a window. There was a window on the ark that was located in the upper part of the ark. Charles Spurgeon was known for bringing the Bible to life, including the faith of Noah in this particular situation. Because he believed in God, therefore he removed the covering of the ark and looked abroad, expecting by and by to see not only the tops of the mountains, but also a dry and green earth once more. True faith often goes to the window. If your faith turns her face to the wall and expects nothing, I do not think it is genuine faith. We are not told too much about the inside of the ark, so we would only be speculating about most things, but when Noah opened the window, he released birds. At first, Noah released a raven, then he released a dove. Research shows that mariners, or sailors, or seamen, would use birds to locate dry land as it will fly high enough to see for miles around. But if it cannot find dry land, it will return back to the vessel, which is what Scripture informs us. The raven is said to have traveled to and fro to and from the ark to look for land. So it is probably fair to assume that the bird did stop to rest. But it never did return back inside. It did this until it found dry land. So for a while, we know that the mountain tops were probably a long distance away. An interesting note about the raven is it was considered to be an unclean animal by God and in Hebrew tradition, so the raven had 2 birds inside, 1 pair, unless they repopulate while in the ark. Noah did the same thing with a dove as he released one out of the window. A dove was considered to be a clean animal, and there were 7 pairs to be chosen from. And when the dove returned into the ark, Noah had some type of idea about the state of the earth at the time. With the dove returning, this was an indication that the waters had not drained enough for them to leave the ark. Notice that over a 2-week period, a period of 7 days, then another 7 days, Noah took the dove that had returned to the ark and released her. She came back yet again, but this time she had an olive leaf in her mouth, which was an indication to Noah that the waters were receding and the time was approaching. And 7 days later, he did the same by releasing the dove, but this time, she did not return. From the events of chapter 7 until now, nearly an entire year has unfolded as Noah entered the ark on the 17th day of the 2nd month of his 600th year of life. But now, we find Noah in the 2nd month of his 600th and first year, so it does appear that from the time Noah entered into the ark, And the time he left, it was a full calendar year including the time in which it rained, stopped. The ark landed, and when Noah left. When Noah removed the covering, he was able to see the ground was finally dry. But apparently it was not dried out enough, as it would be another 2 months before Noah and all the others would leave the ark. We are not told exactly why Noah waited so long to leave the ark. Whether he wasn't convinced the land was dry enough for survival, or if he was waiting for God to give him the go-ahead, but finally God spoke to Noah and told him it was time for them to leave the ark. Noah and his family must have been eager and anxious to leave, as a year is a long period of time in any one place. And while the ark saved their lives, they were probably ready to be out of the ark. This ark served a great purpose, to preserve the original bloodline and save the human race, and without it Noah and his family would not have been able to begin humanity over again. This fact connects back to the beginning with God remembered Noah, as he had not forgotten Noah or his family, as God always had them in his sight, and now it was time for them to walk freely again. Just like it was when they went on to the ark, the animals that went into the ark, the animals were unloaded, as we are not told that any animals had died, so we can assume that they had all survived. The animals were saved to repopulate the animal kingdom, just like Noah and his family was saved to repopulate the human race. Charles Spurgeon explained the event like this: Noah came out of the ark no longer cooped up and penned within its narrow limits, he walked abroad, and the whole world was before him where to choose. Was not that a picture of the freedom of the believer who has been buried with Christ and enjoys the possession of God's free spirit? One of the greatest Christian theologians and authors of my lifetime, Frank Turek, summed up the entire story of Noah in this manner: it's natural to be skeptical of a story like Noah. However, the greatest miracle in the Bible is not Noah and the flood. The greatest miracle in the Bible is recorded in the first verse: in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. If that miracle is true, then every miracle in the Bible is at least possible, including Noah's ark. If God created the universe, then he can do whatever he wants inside it. End quote. And this is one more illustration that there is nothing too big for God. And if the same God that created the heavens and the earth, this same God brought Noah through the most catastrophic flood in history of the world, and now is releasing him and his family and all of the animals from the ark, so they can once again repopulation the earth. Although there had been history made up until this point, that history was truly the past, as it was time to make a new beginning, which means carve a new path for humanity, as this was literally the new birth for humanity. Notice that Noah's first action after leaving the ark was to worship God. And to do so, he offered up a sacrifice to the Lord. Remember, sacrificing some of these animals meant facing possible extinction, as there were only a limited number in existence at this particular time in history. But as we learned with Cain and Abel, a real sacrifice is one that comes from the heart and can truly be costly, but this is pleasing to God. We are told that God smelled a soothing aroma after everything that had happened over the last year. I imagine that such a smell was soothing to Noah and his family as well. And while we can only speculate to what the smell was like, I like to imagine that this aroma was similar to a fresh cut grass on a summer's day. But again, I want you to focus on the fact that God was more pleased with Noah's heart desiring to please God than with the actual sacrifice of burned meat. God is pleased, so he makes a promise that he will never curse the earth with judgment by a flood. Again, which was an act of mercy. While we are made in God's image, there is a rebellious side to man that is corrupt and full of evil, and God took this into consideration when he made this promise. After the flood, the earth would experience seasons as a result of the changes that the earth had just gone through. Remember, the earth had never seen rain until the floods came. And this event would forever see climatic changes in the form and variations in seasons and temperatures. This does not mean that there is not order in how things work, as day will follow the night, and one season will follow another according to God's mercy. But we should take note that the verse begins with, "While the earth remaineth," which lets us know that this earth will not exist eternally. There will come a time when it ceases to exist, but while there is an earth, and we are here to enjoy it, God's mercies will be followed.